Hello and welcome to another episode of Auds and Ends. I'm Carl Keith, Montgomery County Auditor, and I'm your host for Auds and Ends. This is a program, an initiative from the sponsored and hosted by the Montgomery County Auditor's Office as a way of providing the community with some information and on topics that you may not be totally familiar with. And during these episodes, we have the opportunity to interview people from the community that you may not know, and find out what they do and the type of role that they play in the community in a format that's engaging, we hope, and interesting, and hopefully you can learn a little bit more about some things that people are out there doing in the community, providing services and doing some great work as we find out throughout Montgomery County. Today, our guest today for this month's episode is Larry Hartlaub. Larry works in the Montgomery County Auditor's Office with me, and he serves as the Director of Tax and Finance. So this episode we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic, taxes. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about taxes, property taxes in particular, and again that's one of people's favorite topics.
One of mine.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
It is one of Larry's
Right.
because he works in this pretty closely, and so he spends a lot of time with it. Very knowledgeable, a lot of expertise, so we're looking forward to talking to it. Now, but before we do that, I want to talk about you.
Okay.
So Larry is... it's his interesting background because you've been in the auditor's office now how many years?
I believe is this my fourth year here with you?
Your fourth year,
yeah.
maybe 4 and a
Going
half?
on 5, yeah.
So he's not been a long-time employee, but he has a long history in government already.
Yes.
As a young man, already has a long history in government, and he comes to us from Port Clinton and Ottawa County. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background?
Okay. So my start in government actually started in my hometown in Port Clinton, where I was born and raised. When I was the ripe old age of 27, I ran for office for city auditor. Was able to win that in a special election, and I did that for about 5 years, which the city auditor is basically the chief financial officer for the city. So Port Clinton's a city of about 6,000, so you wind up doing a lot of things in that
Port
role.
Clinton is on Lake Erie.
It is. Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's right on the northern shore of Ohio, right on Lake Erie. It's a big tourist area. If you've ever been to Put-in Bay, you've been to Port Clinton. That's where the ferries leave out to go over to the islands. It's not far from Cedar Point. It's vacation land in Ohio, so that's where I'm from. Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, I was able to get appointed to Ottawa County Auditor. So I was once a county auditor myself. And, I did that for about 5 years. Much different scale office than we have here in Montgomery County.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the differences?
Okay. Just for example, the one that sticks out in my head is that I had about 10 and a half full-time employees. So I had a part-time weights and measure inspector. What do we got, 4 or 5 guys on weights inspection here? So, there's a big difference there. We did our own in-house appraisal. So I had 3 guys that did that, where we don't even have that department here. So it was 10 and a half people. What do we have in the Montgomery County office?
About 105.
Right.
About 105.
So it's about an order of 10, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes down the list. So our budget, our all-in budget was about $80 million a year. We did about $80 million in property taxes, where we do closer to $1 billion in both those categories here in Montgomery County. So it was about 38,000 parcels versus 253,000 parcels, and about 41,000 full-time residents. And that's big important because in Ottawa County, on a slower weekend in the summer, there's about 125,000 people present, and on the busiest ones, it was more like 250,000. So it was a very big swing for us.
Well, and of course, you're not unfamiliar with Montgomery County because you went to school here.
I did. I came down. I went to Wright State. I did a bachelor's of science in economics there, and then I also did my master's in economics there as well.
So, from my point of view and from the office point of view, we really thought that Larry was a real find for us. He contacted me and told me he was looking for a career change, and I said, well, how about instead of a career change, how about coming to work for me?
Right.
And we just felt like that was a real good fit for us. Again, he had been the county auditor, but in a smaller county, and what happens in these smaller counties, like you said, you've got a staff of 10. We have a staff of 100. So, I don't do payroll and I don't do tax settlements, and I manage those things. I hire people to do those things. Right. But when you're in a county with 10 employees, you end up wearing a lot of hats and being a lot more hands-on. Is that true?
Yes, and we had a lot flatter management structure. It was me and then everybody else. So, it wasn't. I didn't have. We got a big team of directors and an administrative team that help you carry out everything because you got to manage a much bigger bureaucracy here. So, so you just had to get your hands in on it. Yeah. It was great, though. It gave me a great opportunity to learn kind of all the facets of the office. And then when I came down here, we were able to I kind of waited and see, helped out on some small projects to start out with, and then found a role that I could plug into and, really kind of round out your team when we got the chance.
So you mentioned you got your master's degree while you were here, and then you also got a certified license as a school treasurer?
Yes, I did I got my license about 2 years ago. You got to take a few graduate courses, and then luckily the role you play as county auditor actually qualifies you to waive most of the job shadowing requirements, right?
Okay.
Because we do
that helped.
It does, yeah. That's like a 300-hour waiving thing. Yeah. So you had to shadow somebody for 300 hours as school treasurer or have relevant work experience, which being chief fiscal officer and, doing all the, we manage audits, we do all that sort of stuff, financial reporting, all the pieces with tax revenue and stuff like that. They count that as worthy experience.
Yeah.
So I took a couple courses at UD to get to qualify for that, and then just filled out some paperwork. So I've been a licensed school treasurer for about 2 years now as well.
And again, that's helpful, and we want to get into talking about taxes a little bit, property taxes. Having that skill and that background, I think, is being in the role you are is very helpful. I'm sure you'll agree with that. Yeah. I saw the results of a survey done several years ago, and of course, nobody's really taxes in general is not a very popular subject with most people, but they did in this survey asked, what was the least popular tax, and the property taxes was overwhelmingly at the top of the list. But of course, as you and I, we deal with this a lot, yes. and this is a big part of our job and our role in the county auditor's office. So you want to talk about that role a little bit?
Yeah. So the county auditor has two roles in this, right? We're the chief assessing officer, which assigns the value for tax purposes, right? So that's one piece of the equation, and then the second piece is we also manage all the tax levies, tax rates, tax authorities, and tax districts, so that we can apply the taxes to those parcels and those values correctly, so that we can generate the tax bill for the treasurer to collect those taxes and redistribute down to our local government partners like schools, fire departments, cities and townships who use it for,
human services,
right?
Sinclair Community College.
Yeah, there's all kinds of tax authorities. I was counting this before we left. I think it's 67 or 68 now that we distribute money to in Montgomery County.
I'm sure.
There's a whole bunch of taxing authorities, and we provide that money. If we didn't do it, they wouldn't have the ability to pay for police and fire, for schools, for street repair. This money goes to all kinds of different uses, and it's super important. And the human services levy is actually one of our biggest levies in the county. Actually, probably is the biggest one now that I think about it.
Yeah.
So it's invaluable what we provide, and I feel proud of the work we do, even though I know that not everybody wants to talk to us all the time.
Well, that's true, but they want the services.
They do.
They
absolutely.
want the services,
and we're willing to take that for it.
Yeah,
we're willing to be that front line.
I like to tell people, it might be unpopular, but it's one of those. It's a lot different from the sales tax, and it's a lot different from an income tax. I mean, one thing, it's collected here locally. You're allowed to have, people can have input into it. The tax rates are set by the voters.
Absolutely.
But with levies, and we don't set the tax rate, the voters set the tax rate. And then if they want to, even on the value, if they want to appeal their value, we provide opportunities for them to have their voice in that. And we can talk a little bit about next year's triennial update, with people have an opportunity to meet with us and contest their value if they want to do that. And then the important thing, I think, is what you were alluding to. All that money stays here. I mean, it doesn't. A portion of it doesn't go to Washington. A portion doesn't go to Columbus. All the money that's collected stays here in the local community and is spent here on local services.
Right. And for the purposes of the levy as defined by the voters.
Right.
So, if it's a fire levy, it has
goes
to
to
go
fire.
to
It goes to fire,
so
support fire department.
There's no question about what it's up to, right?
And as you mentioned, about $1 billion?
We are just about to hit $1 billion this year, yes.
That we collect in taxes here in Montgomery County.
So that's like current charges for those tax levies. Then there's also additional special assessments that kind of get us close to that $1 billion. So, that would be for curb gutter sidewalk projects, lighting assessments, ditch maintenance, and stuff like that.
Sure.
That also goes on your property tax bill. That also comes through our office as well. So that's just another additional thing. But when you add that with the taxes, yeah, we're right near $1 billion this year. So.
And most of that goes to local schools.
Almost all, yes.
Yeah.
Like 60% overall goes to local schools.
And so that's the biggest portion of it is the fund goes to funding local schools. And then I think after you get past that, you mentioned human services. The county has a human services levy that
Right.
supports senior citizens and children's services and those types of things, mental health
Yes,
things.
mental health, yeah.
I think that's
Board of DD. And
yeah,
stuff like
that's
that.
another big portion of it. But then the rest of it kind of breaks up and it goes to libraries and
It gets a little fractional after that.
yeah,
so,
Sinclair Community College is part of it.
our
and-
park system,
Yep,
you
yep.
know, those kinds
So
of
we have a
folks.
lot of different agencies, 67?
Yes,
67
67.
taxing districts. And again, it's a big county. One of the things we hear from people a lot of times is, well, the taxes rate and the taxes here in Montgomery County are a lot higher than in Preble or Miami or Greene. Or part of that is just because of the services we provide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes to the Sinclair, the parks districts, the human services levy. Those are things that just aren't typical in every county, and that is one of the more direct reasons why our tax rates are a little higher than other places near us.
Now we've got an election coming up this November.
We do.
And there's some levies on the ballot there.
Yeah.
I think most of them are renewals this year.
Most of them are renewals. We got a big one coming in Kettering, 599 down there. I think that'll raise close to $8 or $9 million if that is successful in November.
For Kettering schools.
Kettering
In
schools. Sorry, yes,
Mhm.
I left out the schools. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have one for Miami Valley Fire District, which is the fire district covers Miamisburg, Miami City, or Miami Township.
Yes.
That's a little odd, but it's a pretty. I'm not sure exactly how much that one's going to generate, but that's a big fire one. That's the other additional one.
But the rest of it are all renewals.
Yes.
And that's, can you just I don't want to get into too much, but
Yeah.
can you tell a little bit difference between a renewal and addition,
Yeah,
replacement?
so,
Because that matters.
So
That
first
makes a
off,
difference.
let's start with additional because I think that's the most logic or most easy to kind of explain. Additional means that it is a new tax levy that will generate additional dollars, right? So if you see additional on your ballot, that is, and you vote for that, you are approving them to raise your taxes for that purpose. Renewal is a levy that has already existed. It was already voted on prior and has been on the tax rates or on the tax duplicate for some time at that point. And usually they are written for 3, 5 years, 10 years, depending on the levy. Some of them are continuous. So if it is not continuous, it needs to be renewed from time to time. So it basically means it needs to come back to the voters to get reapproved. If it is reapproved, it does not generate any new revenue for that district. It just continues to charge that tax going forward. So they continue to collect that revenue, but at the same level. When it's a renewal, the only new money that you can get out of it would be from new construction properties, not anything. If your property already existed, it does not increase your taxes on that level directly.
So the type of levy makes a difference.
It does.
The types of levy makes a difference, and renewals are usually a little easier for the voters to accept.
Didn't we went through this, Mike and I went through this last year. I think it was, we went back 10 years and couldn't find one that had failed.
Couldn't find that it ever failed, a renewal that ever
Yeah,
failed.
they're pretty rare. And if they do, you usually get a couple swings at renewing it. It's technically up to 3, unless it's an emergency. It's up to 4. And if they don't pass it by then it will fall off the taxes, and they will need to come back, or then they will not get that revenue going forward.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the timing on that expiration.
So, again, voters are asked to support these levies, and then we certify the results after whether they pass or fail, and then it gets on the taxes. So a new levy that's passed in November,
Yeah,
if it's dated to start it'll start right away.
Yes,
right away.
The turnaround on this is like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we wait for the Board of Elections to certify those results. We send it up to the state, and we're preparing to get those on the tax bills for January.
Yeah, because the tax bills go out in January,
Yeah,
and we have to have it all together by then.
Absolutely, and we said it's 67 tax authorities, so that is a lot of data entry to enter and double check. That's what my team does most of December. We're working on that sort of stuff, and because we got to get it right, because you make even one decimal place off, could be thousands of tax bills. It could be wrong.
Just like on those gas pumps, one decimal place off of those gas pumps make a big difference in what you get charged, right?
Yeah, we have to pay very close attention when we're doing stuff. So.
Well, so let's talk about just a little bit in what time we have left. So that's not the only thing your department does, though, because you also get involved with there's a public library fund that we distribute, we're responsible for distributing, and also the local government fund. You want to talk about those two?
So these represent old partnerships with the state, right? I like to lead that out there, so in case anyone's ever talking about cutting it, they know that, no, this is a decades-long partnership between state and local government and local libraries. It's a share of general revenue funds from the state budget, so which is predominantly sales and income tax to the state level. The percentage gets split off and sent to these funds. So public libraries get 1.7% of all general revenue funds, and the local government fund gets 1.66% of all of those funds. Now, it used to be higher. 2013 was a banner year for all kinds of things, but that was one of the years that really cut back on local government.
Cut back on the local government fund.
Right, and a little bit of the public library fund as well. And actually, you can see, I think that's when libraries started really putting levies on. Honestly, is during that time. But yeah, so we do that, and I wrote down some numbers here so I can even say it. So, and last year we brought in about just shy of 22 million on the local government fund and just under 24 million on the public library fund. So it's a big amount.
That local government fund, though, so it's been cut in half, basically.
Yes.
So at one point, we would have been collecting 44 million.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And, so a good chunk goes to the county, and then a good chunk goes to the county seat, which for us is Dayton. So, and then the rest of it split up by, we use a formula that uses population and assessed value. And so as those change, we kind of redistribute those funds around those two variables.
And so every city, every township, schools don't get any of that
Schools
money.
do not get local government fund, but they've got that state funding formula from the state that gets that's where they get their state support from.
Right. So the biggest chunk goes to the county and to the city of Dayton, and then the rest gets divided up among the other cities.
And
according to a formula that everyone has agreed to.
Yes. Some time ago, I believe it's dated from the 80s.
It's been a while. It's been a while, yeah.
You told me Bill Loy had a hand.
Yeah, he did, and there's another person from our office. Because the county at one time had gone through a series of lawsuits from the other jurisdictions about the formula, and that it wasn't fair to some of the smaller jurisdictions. And so we did a lot of work, and you mentioned Bill Loy in my office was part of that team that worked out the details of the current formula we use. And so it's been in place for a while now, but every jurisdiction voted to approve it, and we haven't been sued on it in a long time. So it's been working well.
I agree, and it's one of those things that we get an estimate for it every July, and it's been basically from the COVID pandemic. Those estimates have been a little bit harder to nail down. They had originally produced for 2020. I think they said it was going to go down 20 or 30%, and it wound up coming in flat.
Yeah.
So but now their next year was looking at like 24 and 26 respectively. So almost $50 million was coming in was what their estimate was for the next coming year. So
it's been an interesting, and you've got a background in economics. It's been an interesting thing to observe with the pandemic and COVID and things being shut down and business being closed and what that impact has had on local government. I think you get this sense that sometimes people feel like, well, all of local government's revenues were declined, and they're having to fight to come back from all of that, and that's true for a lot of areas. It was cities that were that are primarily dependent on an income tax. They were hit very hard during the pandemic.
Yeah, if you weren't working, you weren't paying income tax.
If you weren't working, you weren't paying an income tax. So those cities got hit pretty hard.
Right.
But a jurisdiction like the county, again, the property taxes continue to get collected and paid and collected.
And great rates, too, 98%-ish.
And so that's another advantage of the property tax. It's a stable source of revenue.
Yes. Even in the worst years, it doesn't go down terribly.
It's kind of, it's almost inflation-proof.
Yeah. And you look at like the percentage that get paid by mortgage companies who pay the bill and then, no matter what, because they don't want the treasurer tax lien is a supreme lien. So
Right,
you don't
right.
want
Yeah.
they will take care of that in order to keep their lien good. So when you have that going on, it's like, what, I can't remember what the percentage is. The treasurer's office knows better than I would, but it's a surprising amount of residential properties are mortgaged.
Oh yeah, it's I'm going to say 60, 70, 80.
Yeah, I would not be
80%,
surprised any one of those.
Is
Yes.
mortgaged, and so that makes right. So it's almost a guarantee source of revenue. And so, yeah, and the local government fund didn't decline as much as we thought it was. And certainly the real estate transactions in the county did not decline. It increased, if
I don't
nothing
think
else.
any of us at the start of this in March, April would have told you that
that
the
was
housing
being,
thing.
No, no.
I've only been in this, 10, 12 years in this time. And I don't know, Carl, if you want to talk, but we definitely had those conversations in our office. And I think we all kind of missed where we did not see the
Did
run
not
coming.
see the market doing what it is, how it worked out. And another episode, I'm going to be talking with the president of the board of the realtors, Dayton Realtors. We're going to talk about the market and how it has, how hot it has been.
Right.
And that continued on through the pandemic.
Can't wait to watch.
It did not slow down, not one bit. So
Well, and the
it's
other
been
part,
interesting.
so going back on that, so the housing market took off, but also people were still buying durable goods, and that's sales tax.
Right.
So
Right.
cars took off,
Even though they
which is a
might
huge portion
be
of sales.
paying it to Amazon or
Right.
having it delivered, but they were still paying taxes
Yeah,
on that.
they a few years ago, Supreme Court ruled that we could charge sales tax on Amazon, and it was so all that stuff coming in. Cars took off too, the used car market, new car market. So all that sales tax, so that stuff kind of surprised on that end as well. So that came in really strong as well. And are continuing to buffer that, and I think that's why we're seeing for going into next year the estimate that the Department of Taxation gave us for public library and local government funds going up so much. So.
People may not realize we have 4 public library districts in Montgomery County. The main one being Dayton. I forget how many branches they have, but they have branches all over the place, and different Vandalia and Kettering and
I know they have about 500,000 square feet.
Okay.
And I can explain.
they have several locations just in the city of Dayton, but they refer to themselves as the Dayton Metro Library because they have reached countywide.
Yeah.
But there are 3 other districts. There's the Wright Memorial that just is in Oakwood, and then Germantown, which is just in Germantown, and then Centerville, Washington Township, and they have 2 branches.
They do have 2 branches.
2 branches. So again, part of the we have a formula, public library formula that we use, which all of those libraries have agreed to.
Yes, they do.
Again, it was a similar process. We had to work out the formula.
We had a more recent revision.
Yeah, we did.
But it turned out amicably. So, no
so
lawyers
again,
involved.
So we again, part of the process every year is we determine how much money they all get, and we're that's the role we play, is to distribute those funds.
Right, and it actually goes into the Budget Commission, which is coming up here soon for us, and that includes Carl and Matt Heck, our prosecutor, and John McManus, our treasurer.
Yeah, members of the Budget Commission who oversee the distribution of these funds.
Right, you guys need to approve those for us so we can use that formula for the following year. And for the library fund, we have there are a few variables, but it's a little different. It's not just population and value. We use square footage, which is how I know that Dayton Metro is just looking at the formula. So Dayton Metro has about 500,000 square feet. I know that because of that. We use square footage of libraries. We use card holders and their circulation numbers. Yeah, so that kind of determines, we use those as a way to adjust so that we can evenly distribute those funds among
Right.
them. So.
Again, Dayton having the large number of square footage, as you meant, and a number of different buildings throughout the county. They're the largest recipient they receive the largest amount of money from that, and then Centerville, Centerville, then probably
Oakwood.
Wright Memorial, and then finally Germantown. All of the districts, Wright Memorial, Centerville, and Dayton, all have levies. They're supported by tax levies as well.
Yes.
And only Germantown doesn't have a tax levy.
That's correct. Yeah. So, and I don't think they've never asked about it. So
No,
I'm assuming it's not really on.
Yeah, they have a really nice facility, though.
Yeah,
all of them do. I mean, all of them have recent years. I was out at Wright Memorial. You and I both were out there, and toured when they had an opening after they've had some remodeling, renovation out there, and. Same thing in Centerville. Dayton has built new buildings all across the county. Still building.
Yes,
still
they are.
building. And so they all have really nice facilities. They had to change their philosophy, because libraries are different.
Right.
Libraries are having a different role than they used to have, and So it's been interesting, and we're glad to support that work.
Right.
As you said, the things that we get involved in, and sometimes they may not be the most popular things, but we're supporting very important work in the community.
Right, and I think it's one of the things that at the Auditor's office is, we kind of are always kind of behind the scenes. We work with everybody, so we know the city managers, we know the finance directors of all kinds of different entities, and it's because we help them with their revenue sources,
sure.
right? And we pass through a lot of money from the state down to them, and sometimes we help communicate with the state for those folks as well, and we provide a lot of information to those folks if we can. So.
We're a source for them when they have questions and about levies and the impact and revenue. They look to us to help give them some guidance on a proper strategy to take. And
yeah, I just say we've seen a lot more pitches, right? Because we see it from everybody, right?
Right.
So we're happy to help where we can. It's what we're here to do, and
right.
I'm glad that we can help provide these services. And if we have to. And we I also enjoy talking to taxpayers when they want to know more about it. We're happy to explain it. We know it's a complicated system, but I find that when we get a chance to, we usually do pretty good, and I think people are usually helpful, or they're excited. I don't want to say excited, that's the wrong word, but they want to. They're usually very happy that we're able to kind of demystify the process a little bit.
Because it can be a big mystery, I think.
Yeah, I stare at spreadsheets all day to understand this. Most people don't have time for that.
Right.
So.
Well, Larry, again, it is just a pleasure to work with you, and again, because you're very knowledgeable and you're very committed and dedicated to the work, and because you realize it's important work, important role we play in the community. So again, I want to thank you for being my guest today, and that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Odds and Ends.